At the Awakening Plaza, a giant LED screen flashed non-stop headlines. Today's best dungeon, White Bone Throne, online adventurers. Newbie Lord survival rate, Warlord 72% versus Dungeon Lord 3%. Trending search, a rookie had awakened an SSS rank unit, the 12-winged angel, and was already being hailed as a future king of angels. At the same time, a flood of memories hit Chen Yu. Just a moment ago, he'd been an exhausted game programmer, pulling another all-nighter and working himself half to death. Now he was here. New world, new body, new life. So yeah, he had transmigrated. After forcing himself to calm down, Chen Yu quickly sorted through the original owner's memories. This was a world of universal lords. Everyone had a chance to awaken and become one. The talented awakened powerful lord classes with ease, the average struggled for years and still got nothing. The original Chen Yu had been one of the average ones. To force an awakening, he had sold his house, taken huge loans, and stuffed himself with drugs, injections, and hormones. In the end, he did awaken. But instead of a warlord, he became a dungeon lord. The shock was too much, the original owner died on the spot. And that was how Chen Yu ended up here. After understanding what a dungeon lord actually was, even Chen Yu felt his head start to hurt. Warlords had it easy, build territory, train troops, expand. Dungeon lords, their lives were hell. They had to build dungeons and deal with adventurers from other worlds. Those adventurers lived off dungeon raids. They chased danger, loot, and resources because their own worlds didn't have enough to survive. So for dungeon lords, adventurers were both prey and customers. Kill them and the dungeon gained resources. Fail to kill them and the territory starved. But if the dungeon was too hard, adventurers would get nothing, go hungry, and never return. If it was too easy, they'd clear it without dying, and the dungeon lord would gain nothing. Either way, it was bad. And without enough resources, the dungeon couldn't keep running. That was why modern dungeons had become absurdly competitive. They weren't just building traps and monsters anymore. They were throwing out events, rewards, gimmicks, and every trick possible to attract adventurers. Everyone get ready, time to move out. At the front of the plaza, a teacher-like man turned and shouted at the crowd. Chen Yu looked around. The place was full of graduates about to head into the dark world. Most had awakened as warlords. Only a small group had become dungeon lords. And all the dungeon lords had been pushed into the same section, looking like a bunch of doomed failures next to the warlords. The contrast was brutal. The warlords were excited, restless, eager to show off. The dungeon lords looked dead inside. Only the rich ones could still keep their heads up. Hey classmate, want to check out Slaughter 3? It's the sequel to Slaughter 1 and Slaughter 2. Guaranteed hit. Want to sign an agency deal? A salesman walked up and handed Chen Yu a flyer. But the moment he saw Chen Yu's face, his expression changed. Oh, it's you. He pulled the flyer back. You still owe our company $200,000. When were you planning to pay that off? He looked Chen Yu up and down, then sneered. Actually, forget it. Judging by that face, you're probably not coming back alive anyway. My bad. At least there's a house left to cover the debt. Then he turned and left. Chen Yu let out a quiet breath. The plaza was packed with people like that, sales reps pushing famous dungeon IPs to desperate rookies. Some were legit. Some were scams. Didn't matter, all of them wanted money. No matter what world it was, being broke still sucked. I already bought the agency rights to a dungeon under Tang Yuan International, someone bragged nearby. The hottest one right now, God of Destruction's punishment. A rich young man strutted toward the teleportation array, chin practically in the sky. When I enter the dark world, I'll be the strongest dungeon lord in this rookie zone. He looked back at the others and smirked. You trash can just wait to die, and don't even think about fighting me for resources. Then he stepped into the array and vanished. The crowd reacted exactly how you'd expect. Chen Yu just sighed. The original owner had struggled for years, sold everything, and nearly destroyed himself just to get here. Meanwhile, some people started with family money, backing, and a top-tier dungeon already in hand. Still, since he was already here, Chen Yu wasn't ready to give up. In his previous life, he had been a top-tier game designer. His head was packed with game systems, player psychology, event design, progression loops, and monetization tricks. He knew how players thought. He knew what kept them hooked. So maybe being a dungeon lord wasn't a dead end after all. Under the school's supervision, the awakened graduates began entering the teleportation array one by one. Chen Yu. Just as he was about to step forward, someone called out to him. He turned and saw a girl in a tracksuit hurrying over from the warlord's side, ponytail swaying behind her. Li Seiya. His childhood neighbor. From the original owner's memories, the two hadn't been especially close over the years, but back when they were kids, he had once stood up for her when she was being bullied. Maybe she still remembered. She hesitated for a second, then asked, You didn't buy any dungeon agency rights, did you? Chen Yu stayed silent. She bit her lip, then spoke quickly. Then come to my territory. I'll send you the coordinates later. As long as the protection period is still active, hurry over. I'll protect you from now on. The moment she said that, people nearby turned to stare. Li Xia was one of the school's recognized beauties, and rumor had it she had awakened the Golden Holy Lion unit. A top-tier start. A future powerhouse. For someone like her to publicly offer protection to a dungeon lord. That was enough to make everyone pay attention. But Chen Yu shook his head. Thanks, he said, but I still want to try. Li Xia froze. Try? Try what? Build from scratch. Wasn't that just suicide with extra steps? She opened her mouth, clearly wanting to say more, but Chen Yu had already stepped into the portal. A cold, mechanical voice rang out in his mind. Heading to the Dark World, respected Dungeon Lord. You have a 7-day newbie protection period. During this time, neither you nor your territory will be attacked by dark creatures. Please develop your territory as soon as possible. What appeared before Chen Yu was a ruined castle and an empty territory. Outside it, a massive protective barrier surrounded the land. It would last for 7 days. After that, the dark creatures outside would come flooding in. A saber-toothed tiger lay just beyond the barrier, over 3 meters tall, staring at Chen Yu like he was dinner the moment the shield dropped. Still, dungeon lords had one advantage over warlords. They could keep extending the barrier with soul crystals. The problem was simple. Soul crystals only came from killing adventurers. That was why some desperate rookie dungeon lords made instant kill dungeons, just to wipe out the first wave of adventurers and survive a little longer. The result was obvious. Adventurers trusted new dungeons less and less. Which made Chen Yu's start even worse. He turned to inspect his territory. It was almost completely empty. There was only one thing inside. A dungeon gate. The moment Chen Yu focused on it, information appeared in his mind. Building Dungeon Tier 1. Content none. Maximum capacity 0/20. A completely blank dungeon. Everything had to be built from scratch. Chen Yu quickly started sorting through the dungeon lord knowledge in his head, only to realize the original owner had barely studied any of it. The guy had been so sure he'd awaken as a warlord that he had practically ignored the dungeon path entirely. But the more Chen Yu learned, the brighter his eyes became. Dungeon construction in this world was insanely primitive. Lords had to build everything through imagination. Most people could only recreate things they had already seen, and anything truly original cost huge amounts of effort. Because of that, dungeon lords guarded their ideas like treasure and never shared them. And the moment Chen Yu realized that, he nearly laughed. Because he had something this world didn't. A whole Earth's worth of game ideas. Undead legions, mythological boss fights, endless concepts, endless mechanics. And on top of that, he had been a veteran game designer. If these people were all building dungeons with closed-door thinking, then once he got serious, his content would crush them. That solved one problem. The second was harder. How was he supposed to balance the adventurers? No matter how good the dungeon was, adventurers still came here to survive. If they couldn't get enough benefits, they wouldn't care how fun it was. Chen Yu kept digging through the rules, trying to find the answer. Then he froze. A second later, he almost burst out laughing. He had misunderstood the system completely. Adventurers didn't earn resources by clearing the dungeon. They earned resources based on the dopamine they produced while playing it. In other words, even if death was guaranteed, as long as the dungeon was exciting enough, fun enough, thrilling enough, they could still get rewards. Chen Yu instantly understood why veteran dungeon lords kept lowering their difficulty later on. It wasn't because clearing the dungeon mattered most. It was because winning was the easiest way to give players satisfaction. But that wasn't the only way. And compared to the methods in this world, their thinking was way too shallow. A smile slowly spread across Chen Yu's face. He already had an idea. There wasn't enough time left for Chen Yu to build anything massive. If he wanted to finish before the beginner protection period ended, the dungeon had to be simple, small, and addictive enough to keep adventurers hooked. So after thinking it through, Chen Yu made his choice. A card game. No monsters, no maze, no death traps. Just one room, one table, and a game addictive enough to make people burn through all their daily attempts here. Happy Landlord. Once he decided, Chen Yu got to work immediately. He poured his consciousness into the dungeon core and started building from scratch, a golden card room, flashy and high class, styled like a casino from a gambling movie. Then came the card table, then the chips. That was it. Even so, by the time he finished, an entire day had already passed. When Chen Yu finally came back to his senses, the sun was already setting. Too late to open the dungeon. Most adventurers had probably used up their attempts for the day, so Chen Yu decided to wait until morning. With nothing else to do, he exchanged some free beginner food, sat in front of the protective barrier, and ate while staring at the saber-toothed tiger still camping outside. The tiger glared back, drooling in rage. Chen Yu ate even more happily. After that, he checked the Lord chat room. It was full of rookies complaining about bad starts, weak units, and terrible luck, nothing useful. Then he noticed two unread mails. The first claimed to be from some sealed demon god asking for money. Chen Yu skipped it without hesitation. The second was from Lei Xia. She had tracked down his communication number and sent him a long message saying her territory wasn't far away. If he couldn't hold on, he could go to her and she would protect him. Chen Yu deleted it at first. Then, after a few seconds of thought, he restored it from the trash. Confidence was one thing. Having a backup plan was another. That night, Chen Yu returned to the castle, lay down on the cold stone bed, and fell asleep. The next morning, he stood in front of the dungeon entrance. Do you want to start the dungeon? Start. The dungeon gate lit up. A moment later, 3 adventurers appeared inside the room. 2 men, 1 woman. Only 3. The minimum number possible. Chen Yu narrowed his eyes, but quickly relaxed. This was exactly why he had chosen Happy Landlord instead of something like Mahjong. Then he stepped into the dungeon himself. Welcome to my dungeon. The 3 adventurers turned toward him. The girl, Bai Feifei, looked around curiously. You're the dungeon lord. That's right. Before Chen Yu could explain further, one of the male adventurers, Li Ruopu, let out a long sigh. Please don't tell me this is another cheap escape room. New dungeon lords really only know one trick. The other man, Wu Yue, nodded. Seriously, at least add some horror elements or something. Bai Feifei rolled her eyes. Stop whining. New lords barely have time to build anything. The 3 of them were already discussing other dungeons before the game had even started, clearly treating this place as a throwaway run before heading somewhere better. Chen Yu didn't mind. He simply smiled and activated the tutorial. Before we begin, let me explain the rules. He paused, then added calmly. No monsters, no death scenes, no horror. That got their attention. Then Chen Yu took out a few happy coins and handed them over. These are your starting chips, free of charge. As long as you still have coins, you can keep playing. The moment you lose them all. He smiled. The game ends. The 3 adventurers stared at Chen Yu in disbelief. No death scenes, no horror. Bai Feifei looked genuinely confused. Then how are you supposed to make a living? Chen Yu just smiled and let them focus on the rules. At first, none of them took the game seriously. Li Ruopu only cared about one thing, using up his happy coins as fast as possible so he could leave for God of Destruction's punishment. Wu Yue felt the same. Even after the tutorial, he still looked unimpressed. Then the game started. A minute later, Wu Yue, who had been saying he'd lose on purpose, called Landlord the second he saw a good hand. A few minutes after that, he was already yelling at the table. Soon, all 3 of them were hooked. Coins changed hands, voices got louder, complaints turned into shouting, laughter, and trash talk. Before they knew it, half an hour had passed. And suddenly, nobody wanted to leave anymore. Wu Yue stared at his nearly empty stack of happy coins and looked at Chen Yu like he'd committed a crime. Lord, you're way too stingy. This isn't enough to play. Li Ruopu immediately backed him up. Chen Yu smiled. The free coins are gone. If you want more, you can exchange them. How much? One death count for 500 happy coins. Wu Yue's eyes lit up on the spot. He had already figured out this dungeon would give him a solid reward settlement. If one death count could buy him 500 more coins, then this was absolutely worth it. Then I'm spending. He paid without hesitation and threw himself right back into the game. 8 hours later, Bai Feifei jumped up in excitement, proudly showing off her mountain of winnings, while the other two looked half dead from losing. By then, the three of them had completely forgotten why they came in the first place. That was when Chen Yu dropped another line. The happy coins won't disappear after you leave. The three of them froze. Chen Yu explained that the dungeon had a save system. Their happy coins could be stored for future visits, though he'd charge a small storage fee over time. The effect was immediate. If the coins could be saved, then leaving wasn't the end of a run anymore. It just meant coming back later to keep playing. And once Chen Yu mentioned that these happy coins would also become the shared currency for future dungeons under his banner, the three adventurers got even more excited. A fun game was one thing. A whole future series of dungeons tied to the same currency. That was a different story. By the end of it, all three were ready to help him advertise. So Chen Yu gave them one last push. The Happy Chess and Cards dungeon was officially launching a referral event. Bring one new player, get 500 happy coins. Bring two, get 1,000. Bring five at once, get 5,000. The three adventurers instantly lost their minds. Bai Feifei said she'd call her friends. Li Ruopu said he'd start dragging people over too. Wu Yue even offered to post about it on the forums. Watching the three of them leave full of energy, Chen Yu smiled. His first dungeon had finally opened. And now the bait was in the water. After Bai Feifei and the other two left, Chen Yu closed the dungeon early. He had already stretched the session out for 8 full hours just to make sure their first experience was perfect. By now, most adventurers had probably used up their daily attempts anyway. Still, the results were better than he expected. 15 soul crystals. After deducting the daily upkeep for the dungeon and the protective barrier, he still had enough to hold on for several more days. But Chen Yu wasn't aiming to just survive. The hardest step was already over. His first dungeon had worked. Now it was time to expand. He went back into the dungeon and made a few upgrades, more tables, clearer divisions between beginner, intermediate, and advanced areas, and a few decorative touches to make the room feel less bare. Then he waited for the next day. That night, while eating dinner under the stars, Chen Yu checked the Lord chat again. As expected, Zhao Haliang was showing off. He claimed he had made 38 soul crystals in a single day with his God of Destruction's punishment dungeon, and the chat was full of people praising him. Others mocked him for copying popular trends and riding someone else's hype. But one message caught Chen Yu's attention. It basically said that no matter how much a dungeon lord earned, they were still hiding behind a shell. If a powerful warlord army came knocking, they'd be finished. Chen Yu's eyes narrowed. That part was true. If he wanted to keep growing, then sooner or later, he'd need enough strength to protect what he built. Meanwhile, in the adventurer world, Bai Feifei was staring at her settlement rewards in shock. Instant noodles, cola, cream puffs, hamburgers. None of it looked familiar. For a second, she even wondered if Chen Yu was one of those weird dungeon lords with broken common sense. Then she picked up a cream puff and took a bite. The next second, her eyes widened. It was soft, sweet, creamy, and absurdly delicious. She devoured it in 2 bites, then immediately opened the cola beside it. One gulp later, she froze again. Refreshing, sweet, addictive. Bai Feifei looked down at the pile of food in front of her like she'd just discovered treasure. Forget the game. Even these rewards alone were enough to drag her back into that dungeon. She immediately ran to find her two best friends and started trying to sell them on Chen Yu's dungeon. At first, neither of them believed her. So Bai Feifei shoved chocolate straight into their mouths. A few seconds later, both girls changed sides instantly. Forget whether the dungeon was fun or not. They were going tomorrow. No question. Wu Yue's side wasn't much different. He had also received a pile of snacks and instant noodles, and after following the instructions to prepare one, the smell alone nearly knocked him over. He stared at the steaming bowl, swallowed hard, then made a decision. This had to go on the forums. He quickly snapped a photo with his system terminal and uploaded it. The response was immediate. What is that? Why does it look so good? Which dungeon dropped this? Wu Yue looked at the flood of replies and grinned. Without even realizing it, Chen Yu's dungeon had already started spreading. Wu Yue's forum post didn't explode overnight. He wasn't some famous guide maker or big-name adventurer, so the photo of instant noodles only pulled a few replies from people he already knew. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that Wu Yue had already spotted the opportunity. If Happy Chess and cards really blew up, then the first strategy guide for it would blow up with it. So he immediately wrote one. From card types to combos, rules, and personal tips, he dumped everything he knew into a massive guide and posted it on the forum. Then he attached his referral link at the bottom. If people entered the dungeon through that link, the referral reward would count toward him. Li Ruopu was doing the same thing in his own way. He didn't bother with guides. He just started dragging his old teammates over by force, swearing up and down that the dungeon was fun enough to burn an entire day's worth of attempts. By the time the next morning arrived, Chen Yu checked the dungeon gate and found 12 applications waiting. The original 3 had all returned, and they had brought people with them. Chen Yu approved every one of them. In the card room, the newcomers looked around with obvious doubt. To them, it was still just a flashy room with tables and weird decorations. Some even thought it looked like another cheap beginner dungeon. But Bai Feifei, Li Ruopu, and Wu Jue were already too busy waiting for one thing: their referral rewards. The moment Chen Yu stepped inside, the 3 of them rushed over. Lord, I brought 2 people. I brought 4. I brought 3. Chen Yu smiled and handed out the promised happy coins. Then he returned Bai Feifei's saved coins as well, bringing her total to a ridiculous amount on the spot. The others looked confused. Bai Feifei and the other 2 just smiled and said nothing. They'd understand soon enough. Chen Yu gave the new adventurers their starting coins and opened the tutorial mode again. This time, with Bai Feifei's group helping explain the rules, things moved much faster. Not long after, the room split into 4 tables, and the games officially began. And just a few minutes later, someone screamed. It came from Bai Feifei's table. One of her friends had clearly just realized what kind of dungeon this actually was. Wu Lanlan was on the verge of tears. How did I still lose with a rocket and 3 twos? Bai Feifei sat across from her with the smug expression of someone who had just robbed a child in broad daylight. With skill, she said proudly, you still need practice. Sitting on a fortune of 8,800 happy coins, Bai Feifei had become the terror of the card room. She called Landlord without hesitation, doubled and tripled whenever she felt like it, and crushed people so hard her 2 best friends burned through their starting coins in no time. Naturally, they refused to leave. So they exchanged more attempts for more happy coins and jumped right back into the fight. By then, the entire Happy Chess and Cards dungeon had gone fully chaotic. People who ran out of attempts started dragging in new recruits just to claim referral rewards and keep playing. New adventurers arrived confused, got taught the rules, sat down for a few rounds, and then got hooked too. The card room stayed loud from morning to evening. Shouting, trash talk, complaints, laughter, people begging for rematches, people cursing after getting blown up by rockets. It was complete madness. And Chen Yu loved every second of it. By the time the dungeon closed that night, he had earned 76 soul crystals in a single day. Adding that to what he already had, Chen Yu now held 90 soul crystals. That was enough to start the next phase. He immediately opened the system and pulled up the Adventurer Squad function. If he wanted to expand his territory, scout the area, and prepare for the future, then he needed workers. The first requirement was building an Adventurer Tavern. Fortunately, a level 1 tavern didn't cost any soul crystals. Once it was built, Chen Yu gained access to 20 adventurer slots, temporary bodies that could be occupied by adventurers from another world and sent out to work for him. Of course, no one was going to do that for free. Exploration missions took up a full day, which meant the adventurers who joined wouldn't be able to spend that time farming dungeons for themselves. If Chen Yu wanted people to sign up, the reward had to be good enough. After thinking it through, he quickly posted a mission. Task: expand the map. Explore the forest north of the castle. Search the area, scout nearby threats, and recruit any other races willing to join the territory. Reward: 300 happy coins for all participants. Extra reward: 100 contribution points for the top 5 performers. Chen Yu even added a note explaining that contribution points would have future uses inside his territory. Then he looked at the mission board and smiled. The card room had already brought him his first wave of players. Now it was time to use them. Before turning in for the night, Chen Yu finally gave his territory a name. Great Xia Sleepless City. Then he checked the rest of the territory panel. At the moment he had 1 castle, 1 adventure tavern, and 1 dungeon, happy chess and cards. The beginner protection barrier still had less than 4 days left, and the dungeon itself could only hold 20 players at a time. That was the problem. A dungeon was basically a server. Once it filled up, nobody else could get in. If happy chess and cards kept growing at this speed, 1 room wouldn't be enough for long. And building a second dungeon would cost 100 soul crystals. Chen Yu did a quick estimate and smiled. At this rate, he'd have enough by tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the adventurer world, Bai Feifei was staring at her settlement rewards again. Rice snacks, a spicy hot pot set. Her 2 best friends rushed over carrying their own piles of food, looking like they'd just robbed a festival stall. And for once, none of them were joking. Because this wasn't just good loot. This was life-changing. In the adventure world, surviving 1 day at a time wasn't the only problem. People also had to think about the future, about their parents, about old age, about what happened when they could no longer rely on the system and had to live off whatever savings they'd scraped together. That was why adventurers chased profitable dungeons so desperately. And that was why Wu Lanlin nearly cried while holding her rewards. This was enough food to feed her family for days. Enough to ease pressure at home. Enough to make tomorrow feel less scary. The 3 girls looked at each other and came to the same conclusion. If Lord Chen's dungeon could keep producing rewards like this, then they needed to help him grow. So that night, the 3 of them cleaned up, dressed properly, and did something none of them had bothered with before. They opened a live stream. After checking the name of Chen Yu's territory, Bai Feifei created a new account on the Adventurer Forum. Does Xia Fan Group. Then the 3 girls started promoting Great Xia Sleepless City. They danced, chatted, streamed, and casually talked up the dungeon. The audience that wandered in mostly came to watch pretty girls, not to listen to dungeon recommendations, but that was fine. Even if only a few viewers converted into players, it was still free traffic. And once Bai Feifei noticed the new mission Chen Yu had posted, she immediately pushed that too. Tomorrow, Great Xia Sleepless City would be running an exploration task. Anyone interested could come join them. Wu Yue was doing his own promotion at the same time. This time he stopped acting like a hype machine and wrote a proper review of Happy Chess and Cards instead. Objective tone: rule breakdown, gameplay impressions, and a full recommendation post. One of the adventurers who had gone with him today had decent credibility on the forum, so once that guy backed him up in the comments, the post started looking much more believable. Soon, replies started rolling in. Some people were curious. Some called it fake. Some didn't believe a beginner dungeon could hand out enough food to last for days. And some openly declared that they'd show up tomorrow just to expose the whole thing as a scam. Wu Yue looked at the comments and grinned. Whether they came to praise it or mock it didn't matter. As long as they came, Chen Yu's dungeon had already won. By the next day, the people around Chen Yu had all started moving. Wu Yue kept pushing his strategy guide. Li Ruopu switched to streaming food reviews with Chen Yu's dungeon rewards. Bai Feifei and her two friends kept promoting Great Xia Sleepless City through their livestream. And little by little, it started working. More people were clicking links, more people were asking about happy chess and cards, more people were showing interest in the new expand map mission. The mission reward itself wasn't enough to make people go crazy, just 300 happy coins plus contribution points, but once Wu Yue dug into what those contribution points actually did, the mood changed immediately. They were tied to a system called Starry Sky. Raise your Starry Sky level, and you'd unlock daily rewards, weekly rewards, lower storage fees for happy coins, better treatment in future dungeons, and eventually even interest on saved coins. There were also cosmetic flex rewards like gold names and server-wide notifications. Right now, the benefits were still small. But everyone could tell one thing. If Chen Yu really kept expanding, then getting in early would be insanely valuable. So the mission instantly became worth doing. By the time Chen Yu checked the reservation list for the next day, Happy Chess and Cards was already fully booked. And because most of that traffic had come from Bai Feifei, Wu Yue, and Li Ruopu, Chen Yu quietly gave the three of them a VIP privilege. No matter how full the queue got, they could skip the line and enter directly. The three were thrilled. Then the next morning arrived. Chen Yu activated the Adventurer Tavern and summoned the 20 adventurers who had signed up for the mission. One by one, their adventure spirits lit up, and soon Bai Feifei, Wu Yue, Li Ruopu, and the others stepped into the dark world for the first time, standing in front of Chen Yu's ruined castle. Bai Feifei stared at it and blurted out the obvious. Lord Chen, your castle looks kind of terrible. Chen Yu didn't even deny it. No choice, I'm poor, so whether this place gets better depends on how well all of you perform today. That immediately got a laugh out of the group. Before sending them out, Chen Yu sweetened the deal one more time. Everyone who joined today's mission would have their daily attempts converted into happy coins at double rate. That one sentence alone made the adventurers light up. After all, to them, happy coins were no longer just game currency. They were food, rewards, future savings, and maybe even a long-term investment in Chen Yu's growing dungeon empire. And from Chen Yu's side, the result was even better. Before the dungeon had even opened for the day, he had already earned 100 soul crystals from the adventurers exchanging their attempts. More than yesterday. After a quick briefing, the 20-person adventure squad finally set off toward the northern forest. The dark world was dangerous, but this was still a newbie zone. The monsters here weren't especially strong, and with 20 adventurers moving together, a simple scouting mission shouldn't be too hard. Chen Yu watched them leave, eyes fixed on the forest ahead. If everything went smoothly, Great Xia Sleepless City would finally take its first real step toward expansion. After sending the adventurer squad into the northern forest, Chen Yu turned around and went straight back to work. The reservation count for Happy Chess and Cards had already gone past 20, but the problem was obvious. His dungeon could only hold 20 players at a time. That meant one thing. It was time to open a second server. Now, building a brand new dungeon from scratch would normally take forever, but Chen Yu wasn't creating something new this time. He was just copying Happy Chess and Cards. And since the template already existed, the duplication was basically instant. With 100 soul crystals in hand, Chen Yu built a second dungeon, copied the entire setup over, and renamed them. Happy chess and cards, line 1. Happy chess and cards, line 2. Then he linked the two together and expanded the room layout, effectively doubling the player capacity in one shot. After that, he immediately opened both lines and let the waiting adventurers flood in. While the dungeon on Chen Yu's side was packed with noise, tutorials, and new players learning the rules, the adventure squad in the forest had already run into their first fight. 7 forest giant wolves. The beasts were stronger than normal animals, but for Bai Feifei, Wu Yue, Li Ruopu, and the rest, people who spent their lives diving into combat dungeons, they weren't much of a threat. They grabbed whatever weapons they had and rushed the wolves head-on. After a short and messy fight, 4 wolves were killed on the spot, while the remaining 3 fled into the woods. When the team searched the corpses, they actually found a level 1 magic crystal. That immediately got everyone's attention. Magic crystals were useful for upgrading adventurer spirits, which meant they were valuable to Chen Yu, even if the adventurers themselves couldn't use them directly. So the group quickly decided to bring it back later as a bonus reward for their lord. But before they could celebrate for long, arrows suddenly shot out from the bushes. One adventurer dropped on the spot. The whole group snapped into combat mode immediately and charged straight toward the ambush without hesitation. The attackers clearly hadn't expected that level of aggression. Several small green figures jumped out of the bushes and turned to run. Goblins! The moment Bai Feifei recognized them, her expression changed. Goblins were infamous for raiding and kidnapping weaker races, especially female non-human tribes. Nobody in the group had any intention of letting them go. So they chased. Several goblins were cut down almost immediately, but one of them managed to escape deeper into the forest. Rather than stop, the adventurers followed it on purpose. If it led them back to a goblin nest, that would be even better. But what they found wasn't a nest. It was a goblin troop. More than 30 goblins had gathered in one place, and at the center of them stood a much larger one, a goblin leader. And judging from the chaos ahead, the entire troop was in the middle of attacking a village. Okay, that's the end of this part, but I promise there's much more to come. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing so you don't miss the next part.